All right, welcome back, everyone. It is currently 8:25 p.m. Central Time, Thursday, December 15th. Um, been a little bit. It's been about 2 weeks since our last show, or my last show. Um, don't really have an excuse. Uh, well, I kind of do, but Thanksgiving week, hectic week. I left on Tuesday. Uh, So couldn't really do a show. I was out of town. I probably could have. I just didn't want to. Last week some stuff came up, so couldn't do it then. So I knew I couldn't do it 3 weeks in a row, so I'm doing it this week. So a lot to talk about. First of all, I feel like I should talk about Mike Leach. So news broke Sunday night that, I think it was Sunday night, that Mike Leach, or maybe it was Monday, but one of those days, that Mike Leach had suffered a really bad heart attack and wasn't found for a few minutes, I believe is the report, and was sent to the hospital. I remember checking my phone in the evening and being like, what the heck? What's going on with Mike Leach? And he passed away Tuesday morning. Really sad news. I've never met a single person who didn't like Mike Leach. Just about every single college football fan liked Mike Leach. I like Mike Leach. So it's really sad that something like this happens. And honestly, it just goes to show, man, like, life's short. No day is guaranteed. Anything can happen on any given day. Granted, 61 years old. I mean, that's still very young, but that is, health-wise within plenty of range, I would assume, for a heart attack. But, I mean, even for a young guy like me, I could get killed in a car accident tomorrow. I could, I snore, so I might have sleep apnea and may not wake up. So I don't mean to be morbid, but just life's short, man. It's just sad. It's sad. I really like Mike Leach. He, from a coaching standpoint, I mean, nothing that he did really should equate to wins. James and I have talked about this before on the podcast, but we're big believers in establishing the run and playing balanced football. Control the time of possession. Mike Leach didn't play that way. Mike Leach was aired out, 40, 50 times, probably closer to 50 times a game. Not much emphasis on the run, but it worked. It worked for him. They didn't really own the time of possession either, but it worked for him. And his offense, his play sheet was the size of a receipt, and he put it in his back pocket. Just really interesting, and he came from the Hal Mumme coaching tree and then perfected the offense. And then now, though, even if you look at a coaching tree, it's very impressive too. Dave Aranda, Neil Brown, Lincoln Riley, Art Briles, I think, coached under him, Dana Holgorsen. Like, a lot of coaches have come under the Mike Leach coaching tree. But the thing is, none of them used that offense the way Leach did. Really, Leach is the only one to have success with the true nature of that offense, was just to air it out 50 times a game. I can remember when Leach was at Washington State, I remember seeing stats for Luke Falk and Gardner Minshew that they threw the ball, I think, one time 72 times. That's ridiculous. Your play, like, I would assume, let's pretend it's 90 plays. That means you're throwing the ball 72% of the time and running the ball 18 times, or 72 times to 18 times. Like that, you need more balance. And all of his coaches have kind of done that, or all of his, I don't want to say successors, but, disciples, if you will, guys who have coached under him, have done that. Like, they've all gone to have, pretty balanced offenses. The only one who was probably true to that was Dana Holgorsen. I say that just as a West Virginia fan. When Dana first arrived at Morgantown, he was pretty true to the Mike Leach offense. He didn't run the ball a lot. He aired it out a lot. Over time at West Virginia, he eventually stopped throwing it so much and leaned on the run game a lot. So just really fascinating. I mean, really good coach. And again, just the way his scheme was, it shouldn't have equated to wins, but it did. And that brings me to my second point. really, a successful coach, even though his win percentage didn't show it. I think his win percentage was like 597, which I'll get into that in a little bit. But he won everywhere he went. He won games at Texas Tech. He won games at Washington State. He won games at Mississippi State, although really he was only there, not counting COVID, the COVID year, he was only there for 2 years and won 7 and 8 games. So I didn't exactly win at Mississippi State, but they were competitive. They just won the Egg Bowl. They were competitive against. Were they competitive against Alabama? I'm not sure they were. But they had a pretty good year this past year, and I would have looked to see what they would do in the coming years under him. But and ended up not working out. So just really sad news. The other thing about Mike Leach is he seemed to be such a nice guy and just kind of unapologetically him, not to the point that he was a jerk or anything like that. He was just a really eccentric guy, loved pirates, had a fascination with pirates, just an oddball, but unapologetically him. He was very charismatic and just funny, and like I said, it was just hard to dislike him, and I think a lot of people feel that way. So I was really bummed, and I've obviously never met Mike Leach, but I was really bummed to hear that of his passing. So a hard day or a hard week, just sad to see someone like that go. But yeah, in regards to his win percentage, I really want to see, I think it's the College Football Hall of Fame, change its rules. In order for a coach to get in now, your win percentage has to be around 60%, and he's just under that. I'd like to see them get rid of that because, in terms of telling the story of college football, you have to include Mike Leach. Coached at 3 programs that really don't have much history of success. Texas Tech, Washington State, Mississippi State. I mean, arguably in the Pac-12, Washington State's one of the worst programs in that conference. Them or Michigan State, not Michigan State, Oregon State, maybe. In the Big 12, probably not Texas Tech, but Texas Tech's down there. In the current Big 12. Maybe Kansas and Iowa State are, I would say, worse, but Texas Tech's maybe just barely above, or Baylor, yeah. So Texas Tech's not quite at the bottom of the Big 12 in terms of historical program. And then Mississippi State, though, is easily, other than Vanderbilt, the worst of the SEC programs, probably, definitely in that division. So I would like to see the Leach get into the College Football Hall of Fame. And I hope the Hall of Fame amends that and gets him in, which I think they will. So that'll do it for my Mike Leach talk. I wanted to talk about that real quick. I'm not going to talk a ton. I'm going to try not to talk a ton tonight. But I do want to talk some college football. So the playoff has been established. Wait a minute. Sorry, I'm watching Thursday Night Football. I'm wondering how Seattle got the ball. Oh, wait, that was a replay. Never mind. So the playoff is set. The bowl games are set. Playoff is Georgia 1, Michigan 2, TCU 3, Ohio State 4. I don't have a problem with 3 out of the 4 teams that got in. I got a little bit of a problem with Ohio State. I mean, I don't understand why we keep talking about record. Not every record is created equal, especially in college football. So I don't understand what the argument was for Ohio State to get in instead of Alabama or even Tennessee. Because the argument was going up to that week or leading up to that conference championship Saturday was how Alabama should be in the playoff if TCU lost. Or I thought there was another team. I don't remember. But I know Alabama was beating that drum that they should get in if TCU lost or if USC lost, which ended up happening. And I kept saying, no, it should. If anyone, it should be Tennessee. I don't care that Hendon Hooker got hurt. Tennessee beat Bama. Tennessee, if the situation worked out, should have gotten the playoff over Bama. It didn't go that way. But I don't think Ohio State should have got in. Their out-of-conference schedule was terrible. The Notre Dame game, you expect Notre Dame to be more competitive. They really weren't. And then the other two out-of-conference games were just weak. Their resume just wasn't very good. Outside of the big, Ohio State and Michigan, the Big Ten was pretty weak this year. I think Penn State's a good team, not a great team, and that's really all there was in the Big Ten. And Ohio State lost to Michigan, and pretty convincingly, even though it was kind of a close game in the third quarter. So other than that, I don't have a problem with it. Georgia and Michigan clearly the two best teams in college football, I think. And I didn't have a problem with TCU getting in. I don't necessarily think you have to win your conference to get in. It certainly helps. But I do believe that it should be based on how you do the whole season, not if you just win your 13th game. So, the Big 12 was easily probably the most competitive of the Power 5 conferences this season. And when I say competitive, I don't mean that it was stacked full of really good teams or, had 2 or 3 really good teams like the SEC. I mean, like, top to bottom, the Big 12 was probably the most competitive. Every team except TCU, every team in that conference at least won at least lost 3 games. And there just wasn't much of a drop-off from TCU to Kansas State, who won the conference, from Kansas State to Texas to, I forget who finished 4th, and on and on and on. There just wasn't a whole lot of a drop-off. Kansas was 6-6, and I think Kansas was better than 6-6. Who knows? If Jalen Daniels doesn't get hurt in the middle of the year, maybe Kansas sneaks into the Big 12 championship. I don't know. But TCU dominated that conference from beginning to end, and I felt they deserved a spot, and they got one. So playoff is set. Looking ahead to those matchups, I think TCU is going to have a hard time with Michigan. Michigan's a really tough matchup. You could argue that Michigan is the best team in college football, and I don't just say that as a Jim Harbaugh fan. They play really good football. They're really good in the trenches. They run the ball extremely well. Can they win without Blake Corum? I have reservations about, although I think they'll be okay. Are they dynamic enough in the passing game? I'm not 100% convinced, but they play really good football. They're good. They're solid defensively. They're better defensively this year than they were last year statistically. I think Michigan's got a real shot to win this whole thing. But I still think Georgia's probably the best team, and I'll get to them in a minute. But Michigan's just a more physical team. They have more talent. They wear you down as the game progresses. So I think that's a little bit of a tough matchup for TCU, a team that has overperformed this year. Sonny Dykes has done a great job, but this is still year 1 for him. He does not have, his guys, whatever you want to argue, in place. So I'm going to lean Michigan there. I think there's a chance TCU could keep that game close, though. As for Georgia and Ohio State, I think Georgia will win. I have a suspicion Ohio State's going to show up. They haven't played since playing Michigan. They're going to have a sour taste in their mouth. Talent-wise, Ohio State matches up with Georgia. But I think physicality is a major problem with Ohio State under Ryan Day especially. There's a reason why Michigan has won that rivalry for the last 2 years and why I think they are now the top team in the Big Ten and entering the era of Michigan dominance in that rivalry because they are the more physical team than Ohio State. I think Ryan Day is going to have to dig deep if he wants Ohio State to succeed at the level it did from when I grew up, from 2002 to 2019 when he took over. Where they beat Michigan every single year, dominated Michigan every single year, won the Big Ten, 10 times or however many, maybe not that many times, but won the Big Ten quite a bit. They got to get more physical. And so I think that's the problem with Ohio State. Who knows? They, like I said, I'm sure have a sour taste in their mouth from losing to Michigan. It makes me think they're going to show up for Georgia. But Kirby Smart's a really good coach. Georgia's much more physical, and I think that's going to be a problem for the Buckeyes. So those are my thoughts on the college football playoff. New Year's 6 ball games. Let me pull those up real quick. The one that I'm probably looking forward to the least, where is it? It's probably the Orange Bowl, Tennessee Clemson. So Tennessee is going to be out without, Hendon Hooker, obviously. Jalen Hyatt just declared for the draft. I think he's going to skip the bowl game. And I don't think Clemson's really that good. So I'm not really looking forward to this game. But I think Clemson's probably going to win going away. They looked really good in the ACC championship. They switched to Cade Klubnik at quarterback finally. So I think Clemson might be hitting its stride. It's going to want to end the year on a high note and get on the right footing going into next year. So that feels like a game Clemson's going to win going away. Tennessee's had a great year, but they're banged up. And I just don't know if they can win without Hendon Hooker or Jalen Hyatt. Sugar Bowl. I think Kansas State might be able to give Alabama a run for its money, but I would still – wait, hold on. Bama's only a 3-point favorite right now. They must have some guys skipping the game. But I think Kansas State's going to have a decent I don't know about decent, but has a chance to upset Bama in that game. I just went through the playoff. Tulane, USC. I wouldn't rule out Tulane, but USC should win. More talent, better coach. They should be able to win that game. Rose Bowl. Penn State, Utah. Is that all of them? I think so. Penn State, Utah. That's going to be a really good game. I'm leaning Utah, just as of the moment. And Utah is a 2.5-point favorite. USC, only a 2.5-point favorite against Tulane. I think Tulane's better than people think. They have a really strange offense. It's, leans heavily on the run game. I think that they're good in the trenches. I think they could give USC a run for their money. But again, talent advantage is critical, and I think Lincoln Riley is a really good coach. So those are my thoughts on college football. Caleb Williams won the Heisman. I was kind of surprised at that because he did not play well in the conference championship. I thought we might have had a Tua Tagovailoa situation when he was at Alabama. Remember, he kind of trailed off in the last game or two of the regular season. Kyler Murray had a big end of the regular season. I didn't think it would be enough to flip or to change the voters' minds heading into the ceremony, but it did, and Kyler Murray ended up winning. So I thought there was a chance that, especially hearing from members of the media and the talking heads, I thought there was a chance that one of the other contestants. I didn't even watch the ceremony. I don't even remember. I know Max Duggan was there. C.J. Stroud might have been there. So I thought there was a chance one of those guys might have picked up the votes that Caleb Williams was supposed to get. But it didn't matter. Caleb Williams won. Probably the right call. I think toward the end of the year, he had a bad game in the Pac-12 championship, but toward the end of the year, he looked like the best player in college football. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes pro. I don't think he will. I haven't seen a decision on that. But he's only had 1 year. I don't think he's going to be a one good year in bail kind of guy, even though I think he's eligible. So that is college football. We got Thursday Night Football going on. San Francisco is up 14-3. I picked the Niners to win tonight. So a lot going on. I don't really feel like going through the last 3 weeks. So, a lot going on in the NFL. So I'm just going to go to last week. The Rams came from behind to beat Las Vegas. This is a problem now for Las Vegas under Josh McDaniels. This is, I don't know how many times, but a few times this year that Vegas has blown a double-digit lead, and that's a serious problem. Because I don't think the Rams did anything special. I didn't watch the game, but they just threw Baker Mayfield out there, and I think the Raiders kind of gave the game away. So I don't think the Rams are turning a corner or anything like that with Baker Mayfield. I think this speaks more about the Raiders. The Rams have the better head coach, and Josh McDaniels has been kind of embarrassed this year when he has gone up against coaches that are significantly better than him, and McVay is one of those guys. So I thought the Raiders were starting to turn a corner. I'm wrong. I don't think the Rams are about to turn a corner now. They were too talented to keep losing. They were 3-4 4-9, or are they 4-9 now? Yeah, they were 3-9 going into last week. Like, they're too talented for that. They're too well coached. They weren't going to keep losing games. All right, moving on. Bills Jets, another close game. I know weather was a little bit of a factor here. Not crazy about the way Buffalo has been playing the last couple of weeks. That's why I dropped them in my power rankings finally. Not crazy about the way they've been playing. But they've had bad weather now twice. It's going to be more bad weather this weekend probably. So the problem with the Bills, they're not built to win in the cold. They rely too much on Josh Allen. They don't have a physical run game. And that's a problem. In Buffalo in January, it gets cold. And they're on track right now to get home field advantage. They have got to establish the run. So that's where I'm at. Jets, I'm just not convinced Mike White is going to save this team. What else? I don't really feel like breaking down all these games. Bengals took care of business against the Browns. The Bengals have won like their last 6 games, I think, and they've won in a variety of different ways. So that's a really good sign as we enter the last month of the season. Cowboys snuck by the Texans. It's the NFL. Any given Sunday, another team can win. The Texans are really bad, but the Cowboys didn't show up. You don't show up in the NFL, you can easily lose. And the Texans really should have won that game. I would argue Dallas got away with one. Vikings lose to the Lions. The Lions are playing really well right now. They've won, I think, 5 of their last 6. They're scoring points. Defense has been a whole lot better the last couple of weeks. So I would not rule out the Lions these last few weeks. It's going to take some help to get them in the playoffs. But, them in Green Bay, do not rule them out. I know I'm a Green Bay fan, but I know for I'll get to that in a bit, I guess. But for Green Bay, they need the Giants to lose 3 out of their next 4, or Washington to lose 3 out of their next 4, and they need the Seahawks to lose 2 of their next 4, while also winning out. And honestly, the least likely of those things to happen might be Green Bay winning out. So the Lions are in a better spot, but they need roughly the same results. And honestly, and they don't really, I don't think, need to win out. It would obviously help. But the Lions, probably the least likely is that they win out. Because you just look at the Giants schedule, look at the Commanders schedule, look at the Seahawks schedule. I think 3 out of 4 and 2 out of 4 for those 3 teams is likely. Vikings, got to be the only 10-3 team in NFL history to have a negative point differential after 13 games. Look, I got into it with James this week. He is. We do not agree on the Vikings, and we got a little heated earlier in the week because I asked him to give me his top 10, and he sent it to me. And at first, I was like, "You got the Vikings too high." He had them at number 7, which is funny because that's where I ended up putting the Vikings in my power rankings. But I was like, "You got the Vikings too high." He's like, "Dude, they're 10-3. They're the number 2 seed. I'm not going to leave them out of the top 10." And I'm like, "Dude, they got a negative 1 point differential this year. This team is not that good." In a normal, James even was saying, in a normal year, they would be 8-5. I think it'd be worse than that. The Vikings are not good. They're terrible defensively. They're really not that good offensively. I would argue they have not reached their potential offensively, and this is supposed to be a new, innovative, offensive-minded coach, and they're really not much better. Maybe even worse. So, Vikings. They're likely still going to win the NFC North. I don't think the Lions are going to catch up. They're going to get a home game in the playoffs. Depending on who they play, they might win that game. But, and then they get the benefit of San Francisco losing Jimmy Garoppolo for the year. So, everything, when I say everything has broke the Vikings' way this year, everything has broken their way this year. Injury luck, 1-possession games, they're 9-0 in 1-possession games this year. That's absurd. Everything, turnover margin, it's all broken their way, and they got a negative 1 point differential to show up. This is not a good team. This is not that good of a team. Vikings beat up on the Titans. I can't figure the Did I say the Vikings again? I got the Vikings on my line. They would argue rent-free. It ain't rent-free, but I was just talking about them. Jags beat the Titans. I can't figure the Jags out. 1 week they're really good. 1 week they're not. However, in the last 3 of their last 5, they've played pretty well. Actually, really 4 of their last 5, they've played pretty well or had at least good showings. I don't know what happened against Detroit a couple of weeks ago. Just not a good showing there, but they've played well 4 of the last 5. I think they've won 3 of their last 5 and then had a good showing in Kansas City. So, they're what? 5-8 now? Yeah. Playoffs probably is out of the question for them, but Trevor Lawrence is playing well, and that's really all you want as a Jags fan. You want Trevor Lawrence playing well while also losing games at this point. Tennessee, that's now 3 losses in a row. This is a problem. I think they're going to turn it around, in these next 4 weeks and win 1 or 2 games. Maybe go even these next 4 weeks. But 3 in a row, losing 3 in a row is a problem, and it feels like their offensive deficiencies are starting to bite them. Eagles are dominant. 3 games in a row scoring. I think 3 games in a row scoring at least 35 points. They're on fire. Giants are slipping. My friend William won't like me saying that, but they're slipping. I'll be very surprised if the Giants make the playoffs at this point. Their remaining schedule is brutal. They've got the Colts this week, and then it's Dallas and Philly and Washington. No, it's Washington this week, and then I think it's Indianapolis, and then Dallas and Philly. It ain't going to be an easy 4-game stretch for the Giants. Ravens Steelers. Any win that the Ravens can get without Lamar Jackson is huge, and they've now got 2 in a row. I don't think he's going to play this week, but they play the Browns. That's a winnable game. Steelers just they got too many issues offensively. They're just not that good. I thought they might. I don't want to say have been turning a corner, but they appeared to be finding their footing a little bit. And, just not a good – they should have won that game against Baltimore. Baltimore was down to its 3rd-string quarterback at one point. Kansas City barely escaped Denver. I was surprised at that, and they were up 27-0. Kansas City – there's a real problem with Kansas City, and it's the fact that the Chiefs are turning the ball over. They rank in the bottom half of the league, I know that much. Bottom 10 in the league in giveaways. That's going to be a problem in the playoffs. If they don't start taking care of the ball, they're not going to win in the playoffs if they don't start taking care of the ball. That's what I'm trying to say. And they turned the ball over, I think, twice against Denver. It led to touchdowns both times. That's why this game was even remotely close. 49ers dominated the Bucs. The Bucs have real problems. Brady can yell at his guys all they want, but he's the one missing throws too. And I'm not going to sit here and say that he's washed or anything like that, because he's not. But you can tell some vulnerability there with Brady. He's missing throws. I think he's missing some open receivers at times. And that he wants to yell and scream at his guys. But I'm like, dude, you're part of the problem here too. Niners. Look, Kyle Shanahan's offense I think, lifts quarterbacks. And I'm still not sold on Brock Purdy. They won last week and the week before. They're winning tonight. I'm still not sold that he can help this team win a Super Bowl, but can they win a couple games in the playoffs with him? I think absolutely. Carolina beat Seattle. Seattle, I was high on Seattle for a few weeks there, but this is now, I think they've lost 3 of 4. They're losing tonight. They have struggled to run the ball, and that's a problem. Geno Smith is not built to lead this team through the air. They have to run the ball to be successful, and they have not been doing that in the last 4 games. It's December now. Teams have tape on these guys, and December is usually when you separate, really Thanksgiving onward is when you separate the men from the boys, and when teams regress, when teams progress, teams get better, teams hit a skid. This is the toughest time of the year. And, Seattle's starting to skid. The Giants are starting to skid. Tampa Bay's been skidding all year. But Carolina's played kind of well their last few games. And their defense is really good. That's kind of an underrated storyline this year. Is the Panthers' defense? I think it's allowing like 15 points per game in its last 5 or 6 games. They've been pretty good on that side of the ball. Chargers beat the Dolphins. So the Chargers needed that. Brandon Staley needed that. They got another tough matchup this week against Tennessee. But that was a game where if the Chargers lose or had lost, it might have been the end of Brandon Staley's tenure as head coach with the Chargers. But they needed a win. They got one. The real storyline here is Tua Tagovailoa and Miami. We're hitting December. And if you go and look at Tua's track record in December, it's not good. And I don't think it's any coincidence. We're now 2 games into December, and he's played horrible in both. Once the weather changes, this is a problem for Tua. His track record's not good, like I said. And now he's showing struggles again in December. That's a problem. And it's enough for me to think that maybe he's not the guy. Maybe Miami won't make the – it's not a done deal that Miami's making the playoffs, even though they're 8-5. Go look at their remaining schedule. And if he keeps playing the way he's playing, Miami's not making the playoffs. And then San Francisco just scored again. Then on top of that, once the weather changes and if he doesn't play well, Miami's not built to win in the cold. They're a pretty one-dimensional offense. He looks to Jalen Waddle, he looks to Tyreek Hill, and they make it happen. They don't run the ball all that well. Their offensive line has been okay, but it's not a very good offensive line still. They've made it work, but now the weather's starting to turn. Like I said, teams are getting tape on these guys. We're going to learn more this week. I think this week's going to determine a lot about Miami. If they lose this week to Buffalo, which I think is likely, it's panic time for the Dolphins and for Tua, I think, going forward. Monday Night Football. Unfortunate that Kyler Murray tore his ACL. The Cardinals weren't likely going to make the playoffs anyway, but without him, even less of a chance to make the playoffs. So I'm not really surprised that New England won by 2 scores. Arizona's not built to win without Kyler Murray. Their roster isn't that talented, and Kingsbury's not that good of a coach. Even though I don't think the roster is horrible, but not a good coach, not a terrific roster. You lose your Pro Bowl level quarterback, it's going to be a problem. And honestly, if I was Arizona, I would strongly consider blowing the whole thing up. I would have done it after last year. I would have fired Kingsbury, maybe fired the GM. Your hands are tied with Kyler Murray. He's easily the best quarterback they've probably had. Well, Carson Palmer was pretty good with them. But best quarterback they've had since Palmer, maybe since Kurt Warner took them to the Super Bowl. So their hands are tied over there. I don't really blame them for that. But I would have moved on from Kingsbury. Probably would have moved on from the GM. Instead, they extended both. Extensions don't really mean anything. Coaches get fired all the time after signing an extension. So I don't really think they mean a ton, but it just depends on how much money you're willing to spend to get them out. So that's the recap for the NFL. Thursday Night Football, Niners are beating the Seahawks. I picked the Niners. So let's get into the picks. Colts at Vikings. Vikings right now are -4. I took the Vikings to win and cover. I don't think the Colts are that good. They've really had a skid the last couple of weeks. Even they're coming off a bye week, though, so that makes me think they might have a shot. Ravens at Browns. Browns are right now -3. I don't think Lamar Jackson's going to play, but it sounds like Tyler Huntley's going to play. And you can do a whole lot worse at quarterback than Tyler Huntley. I think he is one of the better backups in the league. So if he plays, which I think he will, I think the Ravens have a really good shot, and I picked the Ravens to win. Deshaun Watson's been rusty the last couple of weeks since coming back from his suspension. And I just don't buy the Browns. I mean, Kevin Stefanski very well might be fired after this offseason, or after this season. The defense isn't that good. They don't really utilize the run game like they used to. So the Browns are a mess right now, and the Ravens are banged up, but I think they're still got a pretty good shot of winning. Game of the week here, Dolphins at Bills. Bills right now -7. Weather's going to be bad. And if the weather's bad, I have a hard time trusting Tua Tagovailoa. Give me the Bills to win, and the Bills might win comfortably. Eagles at Bears. Really bad matchup for the Bears. Their defense has been terrible the last couple weeks. The Eagles are riding high right now. Eagles will win. Probably not going to be close. Falcons at Saints. I went back and forth on this one. I ended up going with the Saints. The Falcons are starting Desmond Ridder. First NFL head start. First NFL start for him. Don't know what to expect. The Saints have been a better team at home than on the road or neutral site. So I think they're going to show up at home. They're coming off a bye week. I think they're going to be ready to go and get a win. Lions at Jets. Jets are -1.5. I'm surprised the Jets are favored, honestly. Lions are playing well right now. And I'm going to roll with the Lions. I think they're going to win. I don't really buy Mike White. The Jets have regressed in points since he took over. They scored 31 his first week as a starter. They scored, I think, 20 his second game, and then they scored 12 last week. So heading in the wrong direction, and I just don't buy Mike White. So give me the Lions. Steelers at Panthers. Again, another game. I had a hard time picking this one, but I ended up going with the Panthers. Their defense is really good. Played really well the last couple of weeks, and Pittsburgh's offense has struggled on the road. Cowboys at Jags. Oh, my goodness. Another turnover. And another touchdown. This one might be coming back. Cowboys at Jags. Cowboys are -4 right now. I'm actually going to take the upset here. I don't know why, but I'm going to go with the Jags. I like the way Trevor Lawrence has been playing, and I like the way the Jags have been playing the last couple of weeks. They got a veteran head coach. They have a good pass rush. Dak Prescott has thrown 6 interceptions or 8 interceptions in his last 6 games. I'm going to go on a limb and pick the Jags. So that interception was called back, I think. All right. Chiefs at Texans. Right now it's Chiefs -14. You never know in the NFL, playing on the road. I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win, though. Just tough matchup here for the Texans. They don't have a dynamic offense. They don't score points. They've struggled this year on the offensive side of the ball. Even if the Chiefs play a really bad game, it's still Mahomes. It's still Andy Reid. It's still a high-flying offense. It's going to be tough for the Texans to outscore them. Cardinals at Broncos. I took the Broncos. Don't have a ton of trust in Colt McCoy. Don't have a ton of trust in Denver either, but they're too talented to keep losing. They're 3-10. They should be better than that. I don't feel good about it, but I'm going to take the Broncos. Patriots at Raiders. Like I said earlier, Josh McDaniels has been exposed when he has played superior coaches, and he's playing a superior coach this week in Bill Belichick. On top of that, McDaniels used to coach under Belichick, so I think Belichick's going to know his tendencies. He's going to dial up a good game plan and limit the Raiders' offensive production. So I feel pretty good about the Patriots. I'm not super confident in it, but I feel good about the Patriots in this matchup. Titans at Chargers. I think the Titans are going to get it together eventually. I'm not sure it's going to be this week. They've really struggled offensively. Ryan Tannehill hasn't played well. They've played really poorly on offensively because of that. Chargers are banged up, but they have a significant advantage at quarterback with Justin Herbert, and it's a home game for them. I'm going to go with the Chargers. Bengals at Bucks. You never know with Brady. He might turn it on this week, but I'm going to go with the Bengals. Like, the Texans and, matchups like that, the Bucs just aren't that dynamic offensively. They're really struggling. They've exceeded 20 points, I think, twice in the last 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. They have a pretty good defense, but it's going to be hard to slow down Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and that offense enough for Brady to win. So I'm going to go with the Bengals. All right, Giants at Commanders. Commanders are minus 4.5 right now. Nothing really scientific. I just think the Commanders are a better team right now. Plus, they're coming off a bye week, and I think that matters with a veteran head coach like Ron Rivera. It's at home. This game is going to might decide at least a playoff spot. And I think the Commanders are going to show up. I'm going to go with Washington to win. All right, Rams at Packers. Packers right now are minus 7. I'm surprised the line on that's so high. Like I said, I don't think the Rams have figured things out. I don't think that they're going to start turning a corner now. Even though, Baker Mayfield might give this team some adrenaline, going into the last few weeks of the season. But I will say, Green Bay's coming off a bye, so that's good. Matt LaFleur does not have a good track record coming off bye weeks, but this is the first game coming off a bye week that'll be at home for him. That should benefit the Packers. The Rams aren't that good offensively. That should benefit the Packers. And then on top of that, the Packers offense has been quietly kind of good, in the last couple of weeks. Really ever since Christian Watson emerged for them. In their last 4 games, I think the Packers are averaging close to 27 points per game or over 27 points per game and 5.9 yards per play. If you average that for a whole year, those are pretty good numbers. I think the Packers are starting to find their stride a little bit. They're getting into a little bit of a rhythm offensively. I'm going to pick them to win. So those are my picks. That is the podcast. That'll probably do it. I'm probably going to cover the college football coaching carousel later. We still got some jobs open out there, but most of the big ones have been filled. Obviously, Wisconsin made a big splash with getting Luke Fickell. Nebraska made a big splash getting Matt Rule. So it's kind of been a lukewarm coaching carousel. Last year's was crazy. So it makes sense that this one kind of be a little lukewarm. So I'll probably cover that at another time. I'm going to try to podcast a lot these next few weeks. Tomorrow is my last day of work for 2 weeks. I'm not taking 2 weeks off. I get 2 weeks off through my job for Christmas and New Year's. So during my time off, I'm going to try to hop on here. I'm going to try to get James on here. I talked to him last week and said, you got to hop on the podcast. And he was like, absolutely. Oh, yeah, FIFA World Cup going on right now. I meant to get my friend Nodder on the podcast. I might do that when it's all said and done. But I actually had plans to do it with him a couple of weeks ago, and it fell through. I'm going to try to get him on later. We can talk football. I know he likes talking about more things than just soccer. But maybe when it's all said and done. Right now, though, as I'm recording, the final is Argentina and France. Morocco had a really good run. The U.S., kind of disappointing performance, honestly, in the World Cup. 1 loss, 2 draws, and 1 win. So not the best showing. I was expecting more from a team that was supposed to, be full. Granted, it's the second youngest team in the tournament, but I was expecting more. But World Cup final, Argentina, France. I'm leaning Argentina for whatever reason. Don't really follow soccer. Actually, don't really follow it at all. But Messi seems like a good guy. France just won it. I'll be pulling for our fellow Americans, I guess you could say, Argentina. So that'll do it for me. Going on 45 minutes about what I wanted to do tonight. So everybody, have a good weekend. Enjoy some football. I will be driving to Birmingham on Saturday. So I will be busy. I think bowl games start this week too. Anyway, let's just have some fun. Let's enjoy football. Christmas just a week away. Hard to believe. Actually, a little bit more than that, 10 days away currently. But yeah, let's have some fun.